Welcome to pattern making class. This is Annette Julie, and today we are working on our pant design details. You would have already needed to watch my video on pant draft, and we're looking at the top section. This is the back and the front and our side seam, and we have our waistline. So let's go ahead and grab some pattern making paper, and we're going to put a grain line in it. And we're going to copy off our side seam to make a pocket. And the kind of pocket that we're going to make today is a hip pocket. This is that pocket that curves away at the front. You see it on trouser pants, you see it on a denim pant. And the styling looks something like this, where the front of your pants is cut away. So I have a piece of paper to make the pocket bag, and I just drew a style line that looks pretty nice. I think we'll use that one. I'm going to go ahead and match the grain of my paper to a grain line underneath here. And I want to make sure that it's going over my waist and past my side seam. Move it over a little bit more. Great. Let's weight that down. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trace off my side seam. Down to that hip line there. It's curved, and after that it becomes a little bit more straight. So I'll use a straight ruler in a second in that area. And back up to the waist. And I'm going to use my curve ruler to trace off my waist and my waist darts. Good. Now let's go ahead and trace a little bit more of the side seam. We're adding that straight line in there. Now we've traced off our side seam, waist, and up to the dart. Also want to trace one other thing. It is my hip line. There's my hip line. That's ready to make one type of pocket. But when I make a pocket, I can make usually a couple at the same time. So I'm going to also trace through that style line that I have. And I'm going to use this corner on one pocket and take away the corner on another pocket. So this is a template to make two different types of pockets. This is going to be a hip pocket. Okay, we're going to take this off. Move this up here. That's my front and back leg. Now I'm working with just the pocket. I'm going to grab another piece of paper. I'm going to put a grain line on it. And when I go ahead to cut out one pocket, I'm going to cut out two and then change them so they can work together. So I've got my second piece of paper ready to go. Now, if this is my hip pocket and my hand goes in like this, and my fingers spread, I need to go ahead and make that shape. Let's take a look. We're entering the pocket with our hand, spreading our fingers. Looks pretty good. You can make it bigger or smaller based on your needs. So once I'm happy with the shape of my pocket, I'm going to go ahead and true it up. And I can bring this up or down on the pocket. I might start it here and then curve it down. Let's go ahead and curve the bottom of our pocket. And as this goes up here, we can straighten it out. We'll curve this the opposite direction. There we go. Make a nice S curve coming into the bottom of the pocket bag. That looks good. Now we have that dart underneath, on the pant, but we don't need to have it in the pocket. We're just going to take that off and eliminate that dart. Great. Now we can go ahead and put some seam allowance on this. So when we cut it out, we have a second piece of pattern with the seam allowance already on it. Let's go ahead and start drawing our 1/2 inch seam allowance. Half inch up here at the waist. Half inch at the side seam. And 1/2 inch at the bottom of our pocket bag. Making little short lines. I'm going to come back and connect them. Looks like we're almost done, and we can cut that out. So we're going to take our other piece of paper that has a grain line. I'm going to put that underneath. Let me go ahead and weight that together. And let's cut out 2 layers at the same time. This includes the seam allowance for both pieces. This is the bottom where your fingers are for the pocket bag. We're approaching the side seam. And now we're going to finish up with the side seam. Great, now we have two matching pocket bags. Okay, so right here at this style line, I want you to bring that all the way to the edge, square that off there, and let's get a notch. Okay, now you're going to lift up and separate one, and then this one that has the style line on it, you can go ahead and add seam allowance, but it's different than the rest of the pattern pieces you just made. You're adding 1/4 of an inch, and this is on the hip pocket curve opening. This hip pocket curve can be a straight line as well. Let's square that seam allowance off in the seam allowance area. Let's take our ruler here and blend everything. And a little bit farther down. Now we can go ahead and cut out this piece. We need this, don't get rid of it. So here we have our two pockets so far. Let's go ahead and draw a little bit of seam allowance on them so you remember that it has it, and you remember how much. At the side seam we had a 1/2 inch. At the waist we have a 1/2 inch. And I'm just crossing my corners. This shows me each seam. There we have that notch. Okay, got our two pockets so far. Now you're going to grab the triangle, pull that back, grab another piece of paper. Let's put a grain line on your triangle. And we're going to put it on another piece of paper, and we need some room. Let's get a grain line on that piece of paper. And we're going to add to the bottom edge that we cut. The edge that does not have any seam allowance, we're adding to that edge. So, going back to our pattern pieces here, the front of the pant, when you design a hip curve, we're going to go ahead and cut out this triangle that we cut out on that pocket. This is going to go away so that you can get your hand in there. And it's a style line that you can make, like I was mentioning, curved or straight. This is going to sew to that edge. This is going to go sew under, right? I'm not going to see the whole leg or anything. That's going to be under. But then if you're going to cut the pocket bags out of lining, you're going to see the lining coming through. So we need to make this little backing piece. But the backing piece has to be longer, so at this seam we do not see the backing or the lining edge coming up. So let's go back to continuing to work on this little backing. And I like to make it anywhere between 1.5 to 2 inches larger. So there's plenty of room to overlap. One inch usually works out too narrow So I'm adding 2 inches. We can always take off a 1/2 inch if we need to. This looks good. We can go ahead and smooth this out with our ruler, or we can do that with our scissors for now. And we've added onto our little triangular piece that's going to be real fabric as opposed to lining. So it's going to fill in that little hole for us. Okay. So let's go ahead now, take a look at our pockets. Now, when that's in real fabric, we will not see the lining piece. Good. But we need one more little facing right along that edge. Because when this pattern piece is sewn inside, we can see a little bit of this lining rolling forward to the cutout of the pant. So we can make one more facing piece for that. Grab yourself another piece of paper. Let's get a grain line on it. And we're going to make a facing for the hip pocket curve cutout. There's our grain line. Now we're going to match up that hip pocket curve on the grain line. Go ahead and weight that down and trace off side seam. Hip pocket curve opening, and this includes the seam allowance. Top of the waist and over to the edge of that pocket. Just have that notated. Now we have gone ahead and we've made our copy of the edge. You can go ahead and lift that up. Draw yourself a little seam allowance so you know